What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to legendary Tony for his contribution to the channel. He's been a frequent contributor to this channel and a big supporter of this channel ever since that option was put up, and I really appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? Thank you a lot, Tony. And I want to thank everybody that has contributed to this channel over the past year and has supported my channel over the past several years. And I want to thank everybody that has supported me over there on the Patreon and is supporting me on the Patreon. And if you haven't come over to the Patreon, there's already, I think, close to 150 videos already up there. And the Patreon is only $2 per month. I remember when I first opened my Patreon a little bit less than a year ago, and I remember my goal was to sign up 50 people. I said, if I can just, convince 50 people to support me on that format, then I think I'll at least have reached enough people to perhaps change some people's minds about what's going on in this country, to perhaps, be able to make some type of small little insignificant dent in some people in this society. You know what I'm saying? Not saying everything I say is true. Not saying I know everything. I don't. But, just to be able to reach 50 people would have been enough in my mind. But to have reached over 100, it means a lot to me. It really, really does. And I really appreciate all you guys over there on the Patreon. If I don't upload a video today on Patreon, I definitely will upload a couple of videos tomorrow on the Patreon. All right, so let me get to this video. So Michael Jordan has announced that he will be donating $100 million to organizations that are dedicated to promoting racial equality and social justice. Per a joint statement Friday from Jordan and Jordan Brand, the donation will be paid out over a 10-year span with the goal of, quote, ensuring racial equality, social justice, and greater access to education. Now, look, there's been a lot of pressure on Michael Jordan. And shout out to Ticket TV because they did a video about this earlier. Actually, the one that informed me about this. So shout out to Ticket TV, and if you're not subscribed to Ticket TV, please subscribe to Ticket TV. All right, so Michael Jordan has received a lot of pressure to be more involved, a little bit more vocal when it comes to social issues. And a lot of people have criticized Michael, especially in the past, for his lack of involvement, dating all the way back to 30 years ago, when it kind of was started with his terrible, gaffe that he made. I mean, it was a terrible joke about Republicans buy sneakers too, all the way back when the despicable Jesse Helms was running for re-election in the U.S. Senate against Harvey Gantt. And Michael Jordan being from North Carolina, it could have been, who knows, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference, but Jordan's endorsement at that time, who knows, maybe it would have swayed enough white voters, and maybe it would have increased the black turnout even more so for Gantt to win that election. Michael Jordan has said in the past that when he was playing, he had sort of blinders to what was going on outside of basketball. Like, he really wasn't paying too much attention to what was going on. The only defense that I have for Michael, is that he played basketball in a different era, in a different environment. Before social media, like, I just want to say this. Jordan played before there was social media, okay? Matter of fact, some of the first websites started like around the last year or so of the Bulls dynasty. Some of the first actual real websites. So we're talking about like websites, not, and we have probably what, billions of websites now. That's probably an understatement. Some of the first actual websites like CNBC, MSNBC news websites started like the last year of Jordan's dynasty. So this is a totally different era. It didn't have camera phones back then. Okay, so the atrocities with George Floyd, that wouldn't have even been, it probably wouldn't even gotten to what it became, because it would have been their word against the those who were seeing what happened, and most people would have believed police. So that was a totally different era, a totally different environment. We weren't as socially conscious for the most part in the 1990s. Maybe in the earlier 90s, but as the 90s progressed and the economy got well and, really good, and the 90s just wasn't for the most part the same era or environment that we are now. It was a more conservative decade, so you just didn't see as much when it came to black athletes. You didn't see as much activism, and some of the older athletes at the time, like the Jim Browns and Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, were very critical of Michael Jordan. Jackie Joyner-Kersee was another one that got criticized. So it was a different environment. But having said that, though, over the past few years, with all of the incidents that have occurred, with his power, with his still great influence in our society and within our racial group, Michael should have been more vocal. I'm starting to notice, from watching the Last Dance series and from listening to him speak, that he does feel like he's sort of boxed in. He has said in the past that he, in some ways, envies Charles Barkley, because Charles Barkley, I know they're no longer friends, but he has said that he envies Charles Barkley because Barkley can say things and get away with it, whereas if he said the same things, that if he said the same things that Charles Barkley said, then basically it would cause a huge scandal. It'd be all over the papers. It would just be terrible for him. And I think in some ways he feels boxed in by his image. And that if he became more activist, then it would affect him in a lot of ways. Okay, but at the same time, you did accumulate your multi-billion-dollar empire based upon that squeaky clean image. So, you can't have it both ways. So for him to come out with this donation is a good thing. I mean, I know some people probably want him to come out on Twitter and be more vocal, but I don't think that's Jordan's style. He did recently come out and release a statement and expressed his anger and outrage over the murder of George Floyd by police officers. Anybody that watched that tape, anybody with a soul would have been outraged. I mean, outraged. Those were not police officers. Those reminded me of Nazis. But this is what's going on in society. And I think a lot of white people don't quite comprehend that Joe, the neighborhood cop that lives next door, hates black people. See, this is what my theory is. Joe, the neighborhood cop, hates black people. Some of his neighbors, Fred, Ethel, Archie, they aren't too fond of black people too. But they aren't aware that Joe's hatred goes far beyond theirs. Like, they may just be bigoted, but they might have black friends. Joe hates black people. So Joe is able to hide his hatred just enough so that's a little bit acceptable, in their circle. But he really hates black people. This is one of the main reasons he became a cop. Not only just to protect and serve, but to get out his frustrations with black people and harass them and do even worse. That's something that some people have to realize what's going on too in this world. That's just my opinion. But back to Michael Jordan. I think Jordan's style is more philanthropy. It's more philanthropy. It's more giving opportunities. One thing that does get forgotten, and I was surprised when I read this. I think Jordan's businesses, whether you're talking about the Charlotte Hornets or the other businesses that he has majority stakes in, if I'm not mistaken, I think they rank at or near the top in the United States at minority hires in management positions, especially black men in the United States. So Michael's approach is a little bit different. Okay, he's not the guy that's out protesting in the streets. He's more the guy behind closed doors who has power, who's trying to empower as many people that he feels are qualified for the job, but at the same time are of African American descent. If we had more people who were in Michael's position in this society, there were more black owners, there were more black CEOs, and they were hiring more and more people of their descent, then there would be a lot more, there'll be a little bit less economic disparity. But there are also other problems, One of the big problems is just getting your foot in the door in the first place. And most corporations don't want to hire a black person. In fact, they've done studies showing that many corporations will hire the minority with the least amount of minority in them, if you catch my drift. I've seen them do studies saying that, I've read studies saying that, that they hire people who are the lightest complected or appear the whitest and whatever. But at the end of the day, to make a long story short, this is, a step in the right direction. People wanted him to be more vocal and do something, and he's done it. So hopefully we'll see more from him in the future. This is a different era. And while, you know, he has been criticized in the past for his lack of voice in this issue, hopefully in his remaining years he can make atones for that. So tell me what you guys think.